Hello, everyone. Welcome back. It's me, Eddie, with another episode of Eddie G's Comic Culture. Um, Once again, brought to you by the one and only good folks over at Black Apparel. Sending a special shout out, particularly so to a friend and brother of mine, KEVIN.S, who's been doing some wonderful contributions towards the show. Some great work with it, and definitely want to make sure that you guys check out his website at www.blackapparelblk.com. The man has got some good stuff on that page as well as some awesome merchandise. So whenever you have the opportunity to do so, make sure you check it out. And also wanting to send a special shout out to a few of my friends on Instagram. First and foremost, giving out the Strictly Comedy Vault. The man he's a young and up and coming writer. He's got some cool content on his page always. If you have an Instagram account, make sure you check him out. Um, Regarding all things with comic books, pop culture, and even the Funko Pop figures, which he does some pretty nice work on the camera lens, man. Make sure you stop by over his page and see what's up. And also to Blu-ray Dan, another inspiration as to why I'm making this video. The man has an awesome Instagram page where he keeps fresh with updates every day, as well as a YouTube channel where he does a lot of awesome unboxing videos, showcasing a lot of Blu-rays, old and new, and he's got some pretty insightful and neat reviews for these movies as well. So also make sure you check him out for all news regarding films on Blu-ray and Ultra 4K. And also, last but not least, a dear friend of mine, Dennis Knight, and he's a big writer that I know coming up out of New York City, my hometown. um, He's got his own comic book out. It's been publishing for quite some time now, Cross Comics, and he's actually been in a few conventions right about now with his own booth, showcasing his work. He's actually going to be doing the one and only New York Comic Con that's coming up next month. So if you're in the area, if you're in the city around that time in October, make sure you check him out. He's going to have a booth number soon. I should be getting that information from him shortly. So if you guys are ever in the area and you have tickets to go, make sure you stop by and see his material. It's some good stuff you won't be disappointed with. Okay, so jumping right into it today, I wanted to discuss one of my favorite and cherished cartoons of all time growing up when I was a kid, especially in the 80s, the one and only He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. I've been doing a lot of binge watching with it as of recently, since it's been on Netflix, and I got my Wi-Fi back finally. But at this point, I wanted to discuss exactly how important of a character he is, or how important of a character he is, and how important he was in my youth as I was growing up in Queens. And I remember a lot of the times it was there was just a few big cartoons in the 80s. I know I made I spoke earlier about in previous a few episodes back regarding the Real Ghostbusters cartoon on Fox, and but the others were one He-Man, and the other was and of course Thundercats. But this one in particular, I'm gonna do. Don't worry, I will be getting into Thundercats because those are also one of my favorite. That's a very favorite show of mine growing up as a child. But this one is dedicated to He-Man, and I've been doing a lot of binge watching, as I said earlier, over on Netflix, and they got a few episodes now. They're actually streaming them on YouTube actually, so you could also check them out. It wasn't. It was a big thing because it was like, I believe we had, I think it was after Conan the Destroyer that came out in 1982, and Filmation had then started creating this show, almost in a similar pattern, and it had dealt with sorcery, and it dealt with good and evil, and it took place on a planet by the name of Eternia, and of course, there was the hierarchy on Eternia, like King Adam, and these are the cast of characters. It was no, excuse me, King Randor. Adam was the main character in the show, the protagonist, who also was the who, by the power of Grayskull, when he pulled his sword from the loft in his back, and he made the chant, and he transformed into He-Man. and he also had a sidekick, a few sidekicks, if I may be so honest about it. Who was it? Well, of course, it was Battle Cat or Cringer. Cringer, who was the mild-mannered version of Battle Cat. Battle Cat was of course, the warrior tiger, who who was He-Man's right hand. He was actually like a steed, I guess you could say, because He-Man always rode on him into action. Fun fact, by the way, I found out the other day that Battle Cat is actually a hybrid. He's a mix of a tiger and a dragon, so pretty awesome, honestly. And if it wasn't for the power sword, also the magic of the power sword of He-Man, he it would he would be pretty much out of control. So that was pretty neat to see that. But they don't really. I don't think they really expressed that into the show. But there was some. It was a pretty awesome show. It was. It always managed to fit these good storylines. It had a lot of awesome writers from back in the day that actually some of them I know are still working now. J. Michael Straczynski, if you're not familiar with his work, he's actually done a few good, decent graphic novels with DC and some work. I believe he did Superman Earth 1, which was a pretty big book, as a matter of fact. I think it was a pretty inspiring. As a matter of fact, you can see how that book in itself influenced quite a bit of Man of Steel, the movie. That's been released in 2013. So, and even so, with that being said, funny enough, there was kind of like there were some similarities between Superman and He-Man. Of course, He-Man was extremely powerful, and his sword actually garnered, his sword actually amassed this magical powers, where he could do so many ability. He had so many abilities. He managed to deflect, But first and foremost, He-Man had, of course, Herculean strength. The man was strong as hell. The only thing he didn't do was he didn't fly like Superman. But however, he did have a mild-mannered alias, so to speak, as Prince Adam. He was the goofy, klutzy kind of guy. And mind you, he was the Prince of Eternia, but he was still that kind. He was sort of a childish kind of individual. I guess you could say a man-child, I guess you could say. And then, of course, he had Orko, who was also by his side quite a bit. Who was another sorcerer. You had Tila, and then you had, the other cast of characters like the Sorceress, Man-at-Arms, Ram Man. There was an extensive cast on this show. It was amazing. But what was so great about this show is that the fact that it managed to do so much in a time like that, because the animation in the first series wasn't really that fluid. It was very much so into that old. It almost had that sort of Lord of the Rings animations quality from the 70s. So it really wasn't that fluid as it was, as the other cartoons that were out at the time, such as Thundercats and the real Ghostbusters, so to speak, in comparison. So it was different in that sense, but it still managed to pull off a great deal of magic on the show, because it was it circulated perfectly around the battles between good and evil, and the characters that were constantly, and it wasn't just He-Man. It was the entire cast had something also. They always had something to always had something to contribute to the stories of the show. So it wasn't just a story, it wasn't just a show based on only He-Man. He was a savior. He saved the day in every episode, let's be honest. But it'd be selfish of me to say that the cast of characters on the show didn't have much to do with it, because they did. They had a lot of the storylines circulated around those cast of characters, and even Orko himself, who was, I guess you could say, the comic relief of the show. He still had a few episodes that actually revolved around him and his choices. And one of the best things about that show, honestly, this cartoon was just one of those. It was a gem, because after every episode, it was always some sort of lesson to be learned. There was always some sort of lesson taught, and it would always have one of the characters right before the end credits would roll, about how they would relate each episode theme of problems to real life. And they did it in such a way that was so humble and poignant. Some people thought it was corny, but I'm realizing, and sometimes even I was guilty of that feeling as well as a child. But as I sit back and I watch these episodes now and I see the messages that they deliver at the end of each episode, it makes me realize exactly how much I really love the show and why I love the show for what it is, because it was so intricate with a lot of things, and some of the messages were subtle, but it was there, and they made sure that you knew about it by the end of the episode before the next show came on. So with that being said, it was an awesome series to have. It was an awesome series to watch, and quite a bit of ordeal set. I know at the time it was said that a lot of parents weren't too crazy about the show for the simple fact that they felt the cartoon was just there to build up on advertising toys. But for the most part, as I said before, the messages that were brought out on the show after each episode was just astonishing. It was a lovely show. It was definitely amazing. And with that being said, it really sucked that none of these shows actually managed to transcend through past the 80s. I mean, there was a certain magic, of course, but I mean, no, at some point, like, I'm not gonna lie, there were some iterations afterwards, but I believe the original series only lasted 2 years. It debuted in 1983 and finished around 1985. So with that being said, they left Thundercats to take the reign, and then the real Ghostbusters. And during the early 90s, they attempted to return He-Man back by with this show called The New Adventures of He-Man, where he was actually in outer space and he was transformed. He was transported. I don't know how, but he was transported to another planet, and apparently, what's his name? Skeletor was actually he had his own planet now at this point. So I don't understand. It didn't really make so much sense as to why he was still hell bent on conquering another world when he already had a world of his own, which was basically which was basically his entire plot in the first series. But it didn't really work because of the end. I'll say it like this: the animation was a lot better at this point. It had to have been. There should have been some sort of improvement. So it was pretty cool, seeing that. But the characters were horribly miscast, and in particularly so Skeletor. He was very goofy looking. He wasn't as he was silly in the original series, but it still managed. The campiness that Skeletor had in the original series actually matched very well for what it was. Because even though you got to remind yourself that this show is definitely a product of its time. It came out, like I said, in 1983. So, but with the way it transcended into the 90s, it just didn't work at all. It didn't even make it through one season, honestly, and then it was canceled. So it wasn't that great of a deal, but it was very missed for the old He-Man to see the old He-Man back. It was very one of the things I believe, and I'd like to think that I'm not the only fan about that. I think that we all kind of wanted him. The fans of my generation and a bit older, were kind of hoping to see a return of He-Man, that very same He-Man, but with an updated animation. Keep the same look, keep the same characters and everything, but just have the animation at least a little bit more fluent, and have He-Man just adjust him quite a bit. And but it never took fruition, unfortunately. And then they did, however, have luck with the Cartoon Network series in 2002. 2002, Cartoon Network actually took over, and actually ended up getting the rights for He-Man from Filmation, and they ended up they rebooted it to a sense, and it was an actually good series. There's quite a bit of episodes on there. I still haven't seen so much of it because it's been a while, and hopefully they'll post up the new series soon enough. But I highly doubt it, considering how Cartoon Network is, it's owned by Warner Brothers, and Warner Brothers right now are being really iffy with their product. It's just being honest, Warner Brothers are being really iffy with their products at this point. They want to have their own streaming service, but that's neither here nor there. So, with that being said, I would love to see the return of He-Man again. Interestingly enough, there was going to be a sequel series. There was a planned sequel series that was actually by one of the producers from the original series, Lou Scheimer or Shima Scott. I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name. Forgive me, But he was one of the original producers on the show, and he was actually going to bring in a new character, and it was this guy right here. His name is Hero. He was supposedly adopted son of He-Man after He-Man became king of Eternia. And as you can see, he has the power sword as well right here. Pretty awesome. It was a little updated too. You know, nice little intricate detail there, and also had his face into the he was also the way the fan. I love these. By the way, I love these Masters of the Universe classic figures. They are so articulate. It's not even funny. They make the original figures that were out over 30 years ago look like complete crap. And it's funny because even those original figures now are selling. If you go into any convention, any comic book convention, you'll see them on sale for at least $200 and up. And this is some of them are 150 without the card. And that's just straight talk to you right there. But it's just, it was definitely a major chunk of my childhood. I love this show. So that was he was actually a part of a sequel series that was planned from 1996 by one of the original producers, Lou Scheimer, and he was going to bring in the son of He-Man, which was his name was actually Hero. And his name and his what was his alter ego, of course, was going to be called Dare. He was the adopted son of He-Man. He comes into possession after he gets adopted from King He-Man. King Adam, should I say? He goes ahead. He takes possession of the Power Sword, and then he has a battle. Even though he still has he also has a battle bird, from what was said. But Battle Cat was also still at his side as a steed as well. He also possessed the same abilities as the original He-Man, such as the strength, the power sword, the magic, so on and so forth. So that was pretty great as well. But it never came to fruition. It never left it never left the books. It just stayed there. So after that, that's when I guess Cartoon Network took over and rebooted the entire series. And like I said before, they did it to such good avail. It only lasted unfortunately, sadly enough, it only lasted 2 seasons. But then again, so did the original series. And anyway, but the difference between these two shows is that the two series is that back in the 80s, a series for a cartoon, one season for a cartoon could last about over 60 episodes. I mean, that meant that there was a new episode every week. And that's exactly what was the case with the original series. It was over 60 episodes for each season, if I'm not mistaken. So that's a lot of episodes. Something that could go on every week. And then some, you know what I'm saying? So it lasted. It wasn't like you could get tired of seeing the same thing over and over again, because there was a variety of episodes to have right there. So with that being said, it was just it was a beautiful show. It was I know it was a butt of a lot of jokes as the years went on. There was a butt of a lot of jokes. I'm not gonna bring a lot of them up right about now, because that's just a little too, it hurts. It really hurts. And they're funny. I can't lie. A lot of them are funny, but for the most part, it just really hurts hearing them, because it sucks. But for the most part, it really, as the years went by, He-Man started becoming more and more like the Aquaman of cartoons, so to speak, and I guess you could say with the joke. But it seems that there's a newfound respect returning for the character, returning to the show, and oddly enough, it's like the fact that it spawned another show, a spin-off of She-Ra, the Princess of Power, who was also He-Man's cousin. Another striking similarity to Superman, since Supergirl is his cousin as well. So it's pretty, and frankly, and you know what? They did have a crossover for quite a few times in the comic. They had a crossover in the toys, and then a crossover in the comics, because DC Comics ended up buying the rights for Masters of the Universe. And they did have actually not recently, a couple, like maybe 2-3 years ago, the Justice League versus the Masters of the Universe. So I always wanted to see, and I never got to pick it up. I know the trade is available now, so that's definitely on my wish list. I will be picking that up, but I never got around to reading it. Another two crossovers that I always wanted to read as well was Batman and the Ninja Turtles, and then which is coming out with a sequel series as well. So that must have been pretty good for what it was worth. And then Green Lantern and Star Trek. Interestingly enough, the studio that they actually made the He-Man, the original He-Man series, was the same sound studio that they used for the original Star Trek show with Captain Kirk. So that's why when you hear some of the sound effects in the original series for He-Man, I recognize them. Like, I recognize quite a bit of the sound effects. I'm like, this is all from Star Trek. And oddly enough, it was because they used the same the same sound studio. The same sound studio that was used for the Star Trek the original series was used to produce the He-Man cartoon. So that was pretty awesome, to say the least. Another fun fact right there for you guys. But after a while, like I said, it was just, um, he didn't really transcend well after that, the original show. And after that, people wanted to see updated animation. I wanted to see some updated animation for him as well, but I didn't want to see him I didn't want to see it in the vein of them completely taking the character out of the original setting and putting it in something else, because He-Man in space really did, the intergalactic heroes, I guess you could say, was what it was just not my it didn't stick. I mean, it was okay for what it was at the time, and I tried to stick to it because I saw it in Saturday mornings as well, but it just wasn't something that really I could deal with at that point. It literally took too much. It literally stripped the character out of everything that was recognizable of it and put something that was completely unrecognizable on the show. So that's what sucked. But then but of course, like I said, I digress. The He-Man reboot that came on in Cartoon Network was pretty much a lot of redemption in a lot of ways, and it was a much more updated and modern look on a modern take, excuse me, on the character. However, I would be lying if I said I didn't that I'm not curious to see what the sequel series would have been like with that guy over there with him right here. I love why. Let me tell you, I'm not gonna stop being. I'm probably gonna be up. This guy's probably gonna be in your face quite a bit of time for the remainder of the show, because I just love these figures. These Masters of the Universe classic figures are they're gorgeous. I'm sorry, but they really are. The articulation in all of these figures is just unbelievable. And my only gripe with those things is that they're so expensive, and I got lucky with that. Because I got them for what, and this was stretching it back then. I got them for $30, $30. But the original He-Man figures are going for over $100. I mean, the cheapest one that I seen is $119 on Amazon, and that's insane. That's insane, and that's not even counting the other figures that they have out there. So if you want to have like rebuilding the entire Masters of the Universe toy line for your room or whatever, that's gonna run you, man, at least $1,000, if that, if not just a little over it, because even the Castle Grayskull is just like is like $350 now, and that's just a remodern one. That's not even the vintage Castle Grayskull. This is the remodeled. It's obviously still the original show, but it's just been remodeled and remade again, and now they want to let it go for cool 350. So they're not cheap figures at all. They're not cheap accessories. Do not, and that's what's heartbreaking about it, because at least they could have made it at least a little bit more affordable for us fans. But Jesus, sometimes they're so beautiful that at this point that you don't even care. Like, you really think to yourself, and I know it's gonna happen with me tonight, man. I don't give a shit. I'm gonna buy it. I don't care if it's over $100. They have actually one. They actually have one that they did. It's a film. It was actually a direct adaptation from the Filmation Studios He-Man, meaning the figure looked exactly like the cartoon. Like, it didn't have, like, it came with the multiple heads, of course, with the different expressions, but each one of them looked exactly like the cartoon. It wasn't, there was no mistake about it. And they want $180 for that, baby. That $180 is amazing, one of the craziest, there's moments where I've debated on spending that money, and I was like, man, hell no. But then I keep looking at the figure and I'm like, shit, I'm gonna end up buying this. I know I'm gonna end up biting the bullet on that, and then literally just buying it, and trying to hide the cost from it somehow is gonna be an impossibility. but it's gonna happen. Like, I know me, but you know, and even for the characters, just like Man at Arms and Ram Man and Beast Man and Skeletor. Skeletor's another one who's Panther. His cat. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's another pan. You know, that's another piece that's gonna run over a couple of hundred. If, no, I'm not saying I'm lying. I'm talking crap. It's $150. But it's still a lot of money for a toy cat, man. Honestly speaking, that's not even a couple of feet long or anything like that. It's a regular, like, it's supposed that it's a regular cat that accommodates a 7-inch figure for $150. So, you know what I'm saying? That's what's pretty shitty about that deal. But it was a great show, man. And even it was so popular that it even spawned a movie. No matter how terrible it was, it still was a movie. It wasn't as great as it wasn't great at all. But damn, was Skeletor. Skeletor was a badass in that movie. I'm not even gonna front. I think it was Christopher Lee who played him in the feature film. Unfortunately, they ended up screwing the pooch and ended up casting Dolph Lundgren as He-Man, which was their biggest mistake. And of course, but what's funny enough, you see a young Courtney Cox in the film as well too, so that's pretty cool. But I wanted to see Tila though, either way. But it is what it is. But the cast of characters were pretty great. There were a few exceptions, of course. Ram Man was an extremely annoying person. Like, I didn't like rewatching the show now, and I just realized, like, man, there's this guy. He was pathetic. He was just one. He was like the drunk cat in the party. You know what I'm saying? Like, he was the drunk guy in the college dorms, and he managed to get. He just became a cop, I guess, because he just didn't know what the hell to do. But he was okay. He was, there was moments where he was okay. He was tolerable for the most part, but he was still a pain in the ass, if I may say so myself. Orko was pretty hilarious always. Cringer was okay too, but the scaredy cat routine kind of was redundant from time to time. So it was always better to see him as Battle Cat, you know. But there was quite a, like I said, reverting back to the original from He-Man, there was quite a bit of similarities to Superman, because he was super strong. The man had unlimited strength, and you know, basically his alter ego as well was just as much a blumbling, just a klutzy, bumbling kind of guy. That was, he was a big geek, and it was pretty cool. I guess like I said, no, I think it was the terms I used to emphasize his personality was actually quite perfect. He was just a man child, that's all. You know, not a big deal, but like I said, it was just some pretty similarities. And Thundercats had their similarities too. Don't get me twisted. So Thundercats definitely did have their similarities. So I'm not just gonna go ahead and let them off the hook. But this episode isn't about them. This episode is about Masters of the Universe. So, but with that being said, it was a fantastic program. So even with and that's kind of upsetting when when I read the reception of it from time to time, and I see that the parents were kind of against it because they felt that it was a studio's attempt to go ahead and actually, you know, make toys more toys for parents to spend on the children. But that's usually the case with most cartoons anyways. Every successful cartoon, or even an unsuccessful cartoon, ends up with a toy line from some way or another. Some are actually good and deserving. Some of them are just complete crap and didn't even deserve to have their own cereal, and you know what I'm saying. Like, it's real, like, and it's real like that. Like, that's my personal opinion, honestly. But He-Man was just one of those gems, and to me, when it was just like, it wasn't like that they had some good messages after on every show. Every show they had a message that resonated with the episode, and was strong, and strongly enough, those very same messages at the end of each episode still resonate to this day. They still hold up to this day because there's quite a bit of those very same issues that the show talked about 30 years ago are prominent today in today's world. And it's kind of it's kind of sad. It's kind of shitty, to say the least, that we haven't really evolved much to learn this, but this isn't that kind of show. So with that being said, I definitely just, if you guys have never seen He-Man, Masters of the Universe, and you're curious about it, give it a whirl, give it a check it out. They're streaming them all over. They're streaming the show all over Netflix, and and even better, Sigs, now you could watch it on YouTube. So that's also awesome for you guys if you don't have it. If you don't have a Netflix account, but you always were curious to see what the show is about. Just try to bear with a lot of the, try to bear with a lot of the, nostalgia, because it's a very, it is an old cartoon. It debuted in 1983. It's about 34 years old at this point. Don't, just don't judge it off of the face value. Just watch it for what it's worth. If you're a fan of Conan the Barbarian, you're a fan of all these medieval mythology figures such as that, and give it a whirl. I'm pretty sure if you guys, and pretty sure you guys would not be upset about it if you like, if you're a fan of Conan or Hercules or even Game of Thrones, even if that, let's throw that in the mix as well. But yeah, man, it was an excellent show. What a great time to be alive, especially. And there was a huge what an impact that it had on, not just on my life and in my childhood, but millions of kids in all over the world that watched He-Man. You know, felt the magic of this show and what it was about. So it was actually fun and good memories, and thankfully that we still have this show around to this day to reminisce on those memories as well. I remember watching it when we had in the old apartment that I used to live in with my folks in Flushing, Queens, and we had the two TVs, one big TV, the big wooden box, and then the one on top of it in the living room watching it, and boy, those were some hella good times, hell of a good time. But anyways, man, before I go into my nostalgia, before I just take a complete dive down memory lane and start wishing I had a drink in my hand other than lemonade, let me close this episode out. But I just wanted to put this show out there to give a nice little tribute. It's another 80s tribute for you guys. And if you have any questions or comments, you already know the deal. Make sure you hit the comment section and let me know what's up. If you want to talk about the show, let me know what was your favorite part of the show. What was your favorite character? What did you like the best about it? What was your favorite? If you have a favorite episode, let's discuss that also. Make sure you post that up there in the comment section. I would love to see what your replies are. So with that, I'm going to let you guys go for now. And thank you once again for riding out with this show on me, for this wonderful show that I've been trying to do. And trust me, I'm still growing. This is a journey for all of us, and I love doing this forum for you guys, man. So, and anything that you guys want to talk about, let me know. Any suggestions for the future? Thank you for tuning in once again for Eddie G's Comic Culture, and I'll see you guys next time. You have a great night. Take care.